Hi, this is Kirby Summers, and I welcome you to my True Crime Podcast. Today is Monday, February the 19th. And as you all know, I have been working on a new series, Deconstructing Wexner, which basically begins before his birth and takes us back into the lives of his parents, what happened to his parents, his relatives, who they were connected with. And it takes me into, you know what? I've got like about 100 pages written already. It's on my Substack. Part 4 was released on Saturday, so just 2 days ago. The information that I've discovered is some of it is even very surprising for me, and I thought I knew a lot. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to read the beginning paragraph of each one of the 4 installments that I have uploaded to my Substack. In the meanwhile, hey, I want to thank those of you who take the time to like the podcast, and those of you who subscribe, and I guess you get an update as to when I publish something new here on YouTube. So for Deconstructing Wexner Part 1, I basically the summary of this one is a Wexner imprisoned multiple times, multi-generational ties with La Cosa Nostra, and unveiling Leslie Wexner, otherwise known as, and I can't tell you what that word is, but it is connected to, let's say, a statue that is worshipped at the place that we all know as Bohemian Grove, which is basically the entity to whom children are, and I'm going to leave that to your imagination to fill in. The word begins with S. So this one begins with an image of that particular god that is at the Grove. And it says, inside the largest and most luxurious French neoclassical mansion in New York City's Upper East Side, Jeffrey Epstein showcased a strange portrait of Leslie Wexner. No one who spied it even knew it was Wexner or understood its mystical depiction. And then I show a photograph that Jeffrey Epstein had in his mansion in Manhattan. And I'm just going to kind of read around the description of the painting, which nobody noticed. And it was discovered during the 2019 arrest of Jeffrey Epstein. It hung in his home. Nobody has ever pointed out that it's Leslie Wexner or its significance. Basically, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, and everybody else in their circle referred to Wexner in a certain way. That manner, I'm not going to name the actual term, but I will go ahead and read as much as I can of the second paragraph. The mouth is small, representing a never-ending hunger. A second figure is the shadow of evil, literally. The painting's name is as disturbing as Wexner's oddly shaped head as his eyes avoid ours. And then I name the name of the portrait, which literally, again, nobody has written about. In Hebrew, this means the D word, that D figure that is opposite to, let's say, organized religion, which would be God, right? And that name is how Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and others in Wexner's tight-knit circle referred to him. So that's as much as I'm going to read to you about part 1. It goes on to go into great detail about a relative of Wexner's who was imprisoned multiple times, a much earlier connection to, let's say, organized crime, much earlier, an earlier, much earlier connection to Brofman and the Brofman family than ever has been revealed before. In part 2, the subtitle is Leslie Wexner's connection to the Romanovs, Jeffrey Epstein's mysterious temple, and Victoria's secrets revealed. And the first paragraph reads, a cold gray mist hung in the air like a silent roar on the November morning in 2001, when Bella Wexner's 93-year-old body in a casket was loaded onto Jeffrey Epstein's 727, known as the Lolita Express. Even then, Bella wasn't ready to depart. She'd inhaled her last breath on a narrow bed in New York's Mount Sinai Hospital. The bustling city had been her home since 1992, after abandoning her son's lavish estate on Via Los Ingas in Palm Beach. Later purchased by Leon Black, Epstein's second largest benefactor. Bella's Manhattan manse was just steps away from Epstein's. It had once belonged to her son, as had the plane carrying her corpse. Her only male offspring, who inherited her demons and given her the status she felt was her birthright, hadn't bothered to be by her bedside as she slipped into eternity. So, I go on to describe how Wexner came up with the theme for Victoria's Secret, the ancient goddess that he copied, which is not really considered a saintly image. It means exactly the opposite, and I go on to explain how these correlating symbols surrounding his use of the wings for Victoria's Secret, what they represent, and how these symbols are then represented on Jeffrey Epstein's island. So there's a direct connection to many things Wexner, almost everything Wexner, to everything Epstein. There's no coincidence in any of the information, and it goes back a long time. All right, so, and I show images and photos, and I explain everything thoroughly. I also go into the connection to Anton LaVey, Aleister Crowley, and how it intersects with their world. Okay, so for part 3, bear with me because I have well over 100 pages of my new series, Deconstructing Wexner. So for part 3, basically the synopsis of it is the secrets of Epstein's Island revealed, a covert U.S. operation, the importance of the M God, which again, I'm not going to name, but it can be referenced at Bohemian Grove. It is a must know in order to understand Leslie Wexner. And there's another word that I use that I'm not going to repeat on this thing. And I start by showing an image of an ancient statue, which is like a duplicate of the shadow in Leslie Wexner's portrait that hung in Jeffrey Epstein's home. And this statue was on Jeffrey Epstein's island. So then the initial paragraph is on August 9th, 2019, one day before Jeffrey Epstein's life abruptly ended. 2,000 pages of documents from Virginia Giuffre's 2015 defamation lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell, including flight logs, were released by the court and entered into the public record. Among the names on the list of Epstein's known associates was former U.S. Senator from Ohio and one of the first NASA astronauts, John Herschel Glenn, born in 1921 and died in 2016. I'm not going to read the second paragraph of this, but it does go into how Operation Paperclip and other German-related things are connected to the, let's call it the Wexner-Epstein sphere, as well as the United States and some of the symbols they have used for various covert programs. And what I did was I went back and I took some images from Epstein's Island and I connected them historically and how they correlate with everything that happened within that sphere. And frankly, by the time I get to part 4, which is coming soon, you will see how this also interconnects to the finders, to the Franklin child abuse case, to the McMartin case, and to, quite frankly, many others. Part 4. In part 4, I sort of did an image of a very important person in the life of Bella Wexner when she was a child and first moved with her family to Ohio. I added the word that Wexner, the term that Wexner used for his first company, The Limited. I included images of the McMartin preschool case. I included an image of the logo for JCC. And JCC meaning the Jewish Community Centers, which were founded by somebody connected to Wexner and Wexner's family, as well as an image of the finders. And what I'll do is I will read the beginning, and I'll just start by saying that Herschel Kabakov, who I mention here, is Bella's father. When Herschel Kabakov returned from Russia in 1917, he relocated his family from Brooklyn, New York to Columbus, Ohio. Once there, the most prominent man in the city and the person who would be central to their lives was already known as Uncle or Pop to many of the children. They were composed of young orphans and juvenile delinquents. Through the various agencies over which he presided, Pop had access to children of all ages. This is where Leslie Wexner's life before his birth intersects with secret societies, the McMartin preschool case, as well as with the mysterious cult known as the Finders, described by the Washington Times as having ties to the CIA and engaging in satanic rituals, child abuse, and pornography. And then I go deep into the history of this really important person in the lives of Wexner's parents and how his connections and his associations with secret societies and with presidents of the United States and other prominent political figures have been operating since the beginning of, let's say, the United States. But, some of this stuff goes back to even the founding of the United States, but it starts to form the concrete evidence that we need, where basically, if you remember, Alexander Acosta was told to back off because Epstein, belonged to intelligence. So then you will see how Wexner fits into this puzzle. But I decided, instead of just going over the same information that has been provided to you by mainstream media, and I'm going to call them pop-up pundits, because I love Daryl Hamamoto's phrase, I go back into history and I use the imagery and I use the connections that were already there, and I supply receipts to tie all of this together, because there are still a lot of questions the public has and still a lot of answers the public does not have. And I knew that in order for everyone to understand the underlying concept of the Epstein-Maxwell case, one really needs to study this in a historical fashion. All right, guys, if you haven't become a member of my Substack, you may want to go and do that now. I've got about 150 articles in there, including my Deconstructing Wexner series, which to date has probably gotten the most attention. I've gotten uh, feedback from people from all over the world, and in particular, not surprisingly, some people that, let's say, live in Ohio, have some connection to Wexner, yeah, and other people that have been named in certain lawsuits, um, they've all become members so that they could read this series that I have been working on. And I have to say, the work has been tedious, it has been difficult, it has been challenging, it has been nerve-wracking, it has been, I knew going into this in July of 2019, when Epstein was arrested, that this was going to be challenging for me. I was looking for certain things to help me in my own healing process because of what happened to me and my connection to their group. In the meanwhile, what I discovered as I dove into the Wexner family history and as it pertains to the United States government and other governments and our history before the founding fathers has been unsettling for me. I've had a lot of it's not an easy story to absorb because it's very big. And the way it has been portrayed is a very thin layer is looked at by anybody. They look at a very thin layer. What I hope to do with this series is present a full picture so that the information that you guys have possibly obtained, you know where it fits into this puzzle. And that said, please like the podcast and hopefully I'll see you over on Substack. Okay, guys, have a good day. Bye.